Hello, welcome to another episode of This, That, and the Other, and memory I have from the 1970s when I lived in Okinawa. Okinawa had one American station, military station, American Forces Radio and Television Service, and they showed various shows from the U.S. Maybe some of the more recent shows are probably shows that had aired about a year before. Anyway, one of the shows I remember seeing over there was the show Lotsa starring Dom DeLuise. Show only lasted one season from September of 1973 to I think the first week in January of 1974. And the idea came from a British show called On the Buses. Besides Dom DeLuise as a star, there was Kathleen Freeman as his mother, Beverly Sanders as his sister, Olive, Wynn Irwin as Arthur Swan, her husband, who lived with them, and Jack Knight as Bummy Fitzer. Bummy was a person that worked with him. Anyway, the show was basically about Dom DeLuise, a bachelor. His name is Stanley Belmont on the show. He worked for a bus company. He had been a bus driver, and he worked his way up to being in charge of the lost and found department. He took care of items that were lost on a bus and getting them reconciled with the people that lost them. And Bummy was one of the bus drivers, and one of his best friend would stop in his place all the time, and just to talk for a while. His mother was widowed, and she owned the house, and his sister lived in the house. She was married to Arthur, and Arthur never worked. He mainly just sat around the house and ate all the time, and hung around in a bathrobe watching television. House was one of those smaller houses in New York, kind of an area where working class type home. It was just kind of average looking home. But on the show, it was always about Stanley being the breadwinner, being the one that went to work. Nobody else went to work, and all the money he earned helped support the family, including his brother-in-law that didn't have a job. And it was mainly about his day-to-day life, working and struggling to support everybody. He always talked about wanting to buy a color TV, never could quite come up with enough money to be able to buy one. I know back then it was kind of a luxury item, a color television. Not as many people had them. We didn't have one until like 1977. There were some episodes where he had some dates on there and with different women. Ruth Buzzy made an appearance on one of the episodes. Second to last one, Suzanne Summers was on it. She was supposed to be Bummy's girlfriend. Bummy goes away for the weekend and wants Stanley to take care of her, and she ends up liking him. The show debuted September 10th, 1973. Actually, the final episode date was March 15th, 1974, so I guess it lasted a little longer. There were 22 episodes altogether, and I guess ratings were not that good because the show only lasted almost a whole season. And I'd say a whole season usually goes all the way to May, end of May. But anyway, I thought the show was kind of funny, kind of interesting storyline, and I wish there could have been more seasons, but it didn't happen. Anyway, that's a memory I have. I'm sure very few of you even remember this TV show. I do happen to remember it for some reason, maybe because of living in Okinawa and there only being one American television station, and what they had was what we watched. What they showed was what we watched, and that was one of the various shows that I do remember watching when we were in Okinawa from 1971 to 1976. Anyway, another obscure memory, obscure television show. And like I've said before, looking for ideas on shows to do in the future. Shows about preserving history, especially obscure aspects of history. That being said, like, subscribe, share. As always, thanks for watching.